Hey there, thanks for joining me. This is episode 32 of the Positioning to Profit podcast. And on today's episode, we're interviewing Penny Chiasson, who went from a long-term career as a nurse, so being in the healthcare field, and then reinventing herself after finding that she had this passion for hypnosis. So what to do when people are questioning you about your career, and how do you pivot in a way that makes sense for you? This is what we're covering on this episode. Stay tuned. It's a good one. Hey there, I'm Patty Dominguez. You're about to discover what it means to position your brand and your business to stand out. This show explores the stories of small business owners just like you who are bringing their message out to the world and impacting their tribe. So if you want to take your business to a category of one status, then hang with me, because this podcast shares everything you need to know about how to be more prolific with your brand so that you can have more profits. All right, so Penny, thank you so much for being on the Positioning to Profit podcast. It is quite an honor to have you. And I personally am very excited to hear more about your story, because all I know is that you're the infamous Penny that one of our mentors talks about all the time. And so I'm really, really happy to have you on the show.
I'm very happy to be on the show, because the show is about something I've learned a lot about over the last year.
Beautiful, beautiful. So my big question that I always start out with is, what do you believe your superpower is?
My superpower, I believe it's the ability to listen to my client and to detect what's not being said. That's an important thread to the conversation that we're having, whatever it may be.
Excellent. And so when you have you have had such a great background in terms of your professional position in healthcare. And where were you once upon a time, just for background's sake, just to give people a little piece of your story, and then leading into what you do now?
Well, I went into nursing over 25 years ago, and eventually ended up becoming a nurse anesthetist, which was my goal. That was the one thing I always felt like I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And in that process, I worked at a facility where there was a mind-body center. And it intrigued me, always being so science-minded. It intrigued me that patients that I took care of that used mind-body techniques took less anesthesia, less pain medication. So it kind of enticed me, like, what is this about? And I put together a pain management course for registered nurses. And looking through the complementary alternatives that are out there, I discovered the body of research on hypnosis. And I just kind of stewed on that for a few years. And in 2013, took a course out of curiosity, became certified, and left that course knowing that this is what I was meant to do.
Wow. Okay. So for everybody listening, there's so much misunderstood information around hypnosis, just personally being on the receiving end. And I personally have benefited tremendously from hypnosis. I don't know if, I know you've heard me say this in a group that we're in. I had a really horrible stutter due to a traumatic experience. I was physically abused when I was little, and through the school system. And it was so bad, I literally couldn't say my name. So I would go in these tremendous blocks and everything like that. And I literally tried every type of therapy that you could think of. It was through Northwestern, fluency shaping, different modalities. I did color therapy. I did this therapy. I like whatever it is that was possible, I would try it out. This is well into my high school years, into adulthood. And it wasn't until 2003 that I discovered this modality. It was like kind of a combination of NLP and hypnosis out of England that I found out about. And that's a thing that helped me. And it was just incredible. So when I tell people, they're like, yeah, what kind of hocus pocus is that? I'd love to get your take. Like, how do you explain what hypnosis is to people?
The way that I explain it is it's simply a state of mind. Each and every one of us has a normal state of suggestibility. What happens is in the hypnotic state, you are more or less bypassing the conscious analytical and increasing your susceptibility to suggestion. And within the hypnosis profession, what we do is we utilize that state to introduce suggestions, suggest changes to belief patterns, the way we see ourselves, to facilitate change. And people go in and out of this state all of the time. They just may not necessarily be using it to the same end that a hypnotist uses it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That
so
totally
it's natural.
Makes sense. Yeah. So let me ask you, as you were, for the benefit of the listeners that may be thinking about a complete pivot in their career, were you afraid of any judgment to really own being a hypnotist, having been a nurse?
I actually faced a lot of judgment coming out of it. And it really shocked me that as healthcare professionals, how much it's discounted, because the placebo effect is even discounted by a lot of professionals when actually it's a very real phenomenon. I would find myself in conversations with surgeons and explaining. What I would do is I would just present the scientific research to them to refute it. I'm like, it's a natural state of mind. And we go into it and out of it all the time. I'm just taking advantage of it to help a person facilitate change in their life. And I really began to gain ground when I was giving anesthesia at a GI center, and a couple of the doctors sent me their patients who had irritable bowel syndrome. And they saw a huge reduction in their symptoms, because that is in part a stress-related disease, which can, also cause some other stuff. But basically it's stress. And when people learn to shift their perceptions, not internalize everything, and learn how to de-stress, they can reduce and control that. So that's kind of how I bridged that gap.
Okay. And what was the training, the type of hypnosis? Is it a specific modality or program?
So my initial training was a basic NGH certification, which I took with a retired nurse anesthetist. So he added a lot of supplemental material to the basic NGH training, which was centered around the research, the neurological structures in the brain, and neuroplasticity. That's basically our ability to learn and create new neural pathways. It's just a fancy word for it. And I learned from him, but I found myself getting stuck with clients who came in who had emotional eating, or their smoking was tied as an adaptive behavior to stress, anger, or fear. Those types of clients I found challenging, and I felt like I was not well equipped enough to help them, because as a healthcare professional, we have protocols, we have standards, you know exactly what to do next when something's not working. And I had to dig in, and a basic certification is just that. You have to continue to learn to facilitate your clients. And that was when I found out about the systematic approach that I use, and I trained in that approach, which goes for the root cause and neutralizing the root cause around an issue. And I took that and I became very proficient with that. And it's just something that I'm passionate about and I love, because when you work with someone and deep down they realize that there really never was anything wrong with them, that they are completely lovable, and that they've made it through this life of theirs, whatever it is. So in hindsight, there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of because they survive. It changes everything.
It's brilliant. And what was when you finished that particular training and you go into the world, how did you forge ahead and say, okay, this is how I'm going to market myself? Or was it opportunistic clients, or how did that go?
Well, I've had 2 hypnosis practices. In Connecticut, it was all word of mouth. because I had connections with physicians. Right after I took this advanced training, I would say it was about 6 months after, I ended up closing that practice and moving home to Mississippi. And it was almost 2 years before my work schedule allowed me to be able to commit to seeing clients a certain number of hours a week. So when I got started almost 2 years ago, it has been 2 years, oh my, 2 years this month, that's when I came across a coaching program that you and I have in common. And that was when I became aware, my slow introduction to what positioning is and what marketing is and letting people know who you are. That's when I learned I'm not selling hypnosis. What I'm giving people is belief and confidence in themselves so that they can break through that 7-figure barrier, so that they can go to family reunions and not feel like they don't belong there, among gosh knows what else. I mean, everyone's situations are unique and different, but
yeah, therein lies genius. Therein lies the genius, is that you're not selling. And honestly, this applies to whether you're a coach, whatever, if you're selling a widget. At the end of the day, what people are looking for is a transformation. They don't necessarily care, and that's not a dig on anybody, because we're all, I mean, the things that we bring to the table can be cemented with accolades or certifications or things we've done and all that stuff. But
right.
Your client don't care what the certification was that you were taking. They just want to know that you can help them. And it really comes down to the rudimentary need that they're looking for, which is exactly when you had that epiphany or whatever, that's when things changed, I'm assuming.
That changed. And also the big kicker for me was social proof. And I didn't ask for the video testimonial, but there was a spontaneous video testimonial. And, when we have the opportunity to get social proof for what it is that we do, then that's something that we should capitalize on, because I believe it increases our positioning. I think it's different than a written testimonial, especially when it's video, because people can see it's a real person and get the emotion behind it.
Absolutely. So for the listener, if you're not asking for video testimonials, you're really missing out. And I agree, Penny, it starts out where the best type of testimonial is video. So just ask straight away for video testimonials. If not, doing it on social media, because even if it's on Facebook, it's still showing their profile, and it kind of looks more legitimate than if they just emailed you and then you copy paste it on your website with their picture. It just doesn't have the same weight. So
Right.
Video testimonials are where it's at for sure. So what are some other critical success factors that you have found that has helped with your positioning, like your expertise positioning? Okay, we're about halfway through with this episode, but I wanted to make sure that you knew about my new Positioning to Profit quiz so that you can discover how to use the key pillars of positioning to give yourself the ultimate edge for your business. It's an assessment, personalized plan of action to overcome these roadblocks that are keeping you from even more profit. So head on over to positioningquiz.com. All right, let's continue with the show.
Critical success factors. One is when I get on the calls with clients, being able to communicate with them what it is I'm able to get for them, and also to stand fast in my boundaries. There are a lot of ways to do hypnosis, and people educate themselves about what's available out there. And the technique that I use, that I'm expert at, that I know how to get the best results for the client, requires a package of sessions. And so a lot of people will come for single sessions. So I have to be sure not to compromise my values. And to do that, to end up, not that you would necessarily get a lesser result. There are a lot of people that get fantastic results with single session, and I'm not going to not single session hypnotist. I'm talking about what I'm trained at and what I'm proficient with for my clients. So boundaries was a part of that, I think, in that process. People, I think, respect, one, when you're honest with them, and two, sometimes someone will come back and say, gee, this came up. Can we do a session for this? And I will walk them through some steps of how they processed a situation. And I'm like, okay, why don't you try X, Y, and Z? If you find the issue is still coming up, then sure, we can address it. I don't reflexively say, oh yeah, we can do a session for that. We can do a session for that, because I could fill my calendar for a year. If everyone who reached back out to me, I just reflexively said, sure, book in. But if I can help a client reach a place where they can process through something and be self-sufficient, not have to lean on me, I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. It's just holding the boundaries to know that as the expert, this is what I'm recommending, and not get persuaded by maybe what they're looking for as a short-term gain. You'd be compromising their highest good ultimately by doing that. So that to me makes a lot of sense. So how has your business changed in the past, say, 12 months? I love your smile.
In the past 12 months, well, in the first 7 months of last year, I had income in that was taking care of things. Things were getting paid. Some months I was paying myself a little bit. Some months I was not. However, some key things were happening. I was taking action in my business in anticipation of growth. And when I began to hit that momentum to grow, if I had not had a few things already in my business, I would have collapsed under the weight of that growth. And I still resigned my anesthesia position 3 months earlier than my goal had been, because if I had not, then I would have ended up burning myself out. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm still in the process of growing this foundation within the business. I grew much faster than the foundation I had in place. I'm actually quite proud of myself that I kept up with what happened and was able to hold space and show up for my clients in the way that I needed to do that.
So what do you think is next? I mean, do you have goals set for this year, or how are you planning to kind of expand your authority status and grow your positioning?
Yeah, so one of the things that I did last year before my niche pivoted, I launched a book in December, and it did hit #1 international bestseller, but the massive growth that I had last year was in a completely different niche. So I had to be comfortable with saying, okay, this is what I did, but this is clearly the group of people that I'm resonating with and doing the best work with. So I've rebranded my website, redid all the copy. I just this week hired a business manager. We are creating a members area so that when I work one-to-one with a client, they're going to have an area that they can go to watch videos about hypnosis, about the subconscious, about distractions and behaviors, about feelings and how to redirect their attention, and also an area about the unique self-hypnosis that I teach my clients. And the reason for that is then when we do the work together, we're focusing on doing the work that we need to do. And I can just briefly answer any questions they have. We're not spending a lot of time going through the administrative and prep work in the sessions. So that's above and beyond the time that they're investing with me. So we're going to elevate that client experience. We're going to make it a lot more high touch, high feel, because I want my clients to know that I'm taking care of them. And we're going to be adding some self-hypnosis workshops. They're going to be live 8-week workshops online where people can come in and learn that self-hypnosis technique along with how to really get the most out of it in life. And that self-hypnosis technique parallels the one-on-one technique that I use, and it's a much slower, much gentler process of clearing out negativity. raising your vibration, having gratitude for the life that you have, and being in a place of joy. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's awesome, Penny. That sounds really, really great. And then, so what would your suggestion be to someone who is thinking about how to create or how to differentiate their business uniquely, how to position themselves uniquely? Like, what would be the one tip that you have found that has been really key to your growth?
The thing that has been key for me, and when I first got back into business, I was kind of resistant to it, is ideal client research. You have to be able to, and I'm still learning, mine's not perfect, but you have to be able to connect with the person that you want to help. And the most valuable lesson I've learned is if you're speaking to everybody, you're speaking to no one.
Right.
You have to, not that you want to make people feel uncomfortable, but you got to hit their pain point so that they know that you understand what it is they're experiencing. Because I have a quote here on my computer. I think it's attributed to Oprah. Did you hear me? Do I matter? Mm-hmm. Does it mean anything?
Yep.
And I keep that on my computer in my face because it's important. And that's get to know your client, speak to them, and you'll connect with them. I think it's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So for people who are interested in finding out more about your work, Penny Chiasson, how do people get in touch with you, find out more about the power of hypnosis and what you can do for them?
So they can visit my website at pennychiasson.com. And there's information there for training. You can book a discovery call. And there's a link also to get on the wait list for the online workshop.
Excellent. So all of the links for Penny Chiasson are going to be in the show notes, and her social media handles and the best way to get a hold of her. So Penny, thank you so much for being on the Positioning to Profit podcast.
Thanks, Patty. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out the Positioning to Profit podcast. If you haven't already done so, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. And also, it would mean the world to me if you would take a quick moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast player. It really helps to get the word out about the podcast and, of course, the featured guests. And lastly, please make sure to connect with me on social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm on all of them, and use hashtag positioning to profit so that I can search you out and connect that way too. All right. Thanks so much. See you next time.